Hello dear students, welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. So today is 13th April 2024 and today we are going to discuss few important news articles from both the Hindu and Indian Express newspapers. So before discussing all those important news articles, let's try to solve yesterday's practice question. So yesterday I have given you a practice question. The question was, how many of the above nations share borders with Gaza Strip? So why this question is important? This is important because UPSC consistently asks questions from Middle East. And in recent times, Israel-Palestine conflict is also in news because Hamas attacked Israel and Israel has been retaliating the attacks by Hamas. So in this context, it is very important for us to understand which of the following countries or which of the countries share borders with Israel and which of the countries shares border with Palestine, West Bank, Gaza Strip, everything. Now, please understand the correct answer for this question is that Syria doesn't share its borders with the Gaza Strip. So please look at the map here. So this region is known as the Gaza Strip and this region is West Bank. Now, if you can clearly look at this map, Egypt has been sharing its borders with the Gaza Strip, and apart from that, Israel is the only other country which has sharing its borders with Gaza Strip and apart from the Mediterranean Sea on the western side of the Gaza Strip. So therefore, the correct answer for this question is only two. Which are those two countries? They are Egypt and Israel. So these are only two countries which are sharing its borders with the Gaza Strip. So please also look at the map clearly, which countries shares their borders with West Bank also and shares their borders with Israel. So please mark all of those countries. Now today's practice question is, why is gypsum commonly used in agriculture? So this is also one of the most important question. The options given are to improve soil structure, to increase soil pH, to enhance water retention in soil, and option D, to provide essential nutrients for plant growth. So these are four options that are being given here. So please choose the correct answer and answer the question in the comment section, and the correct answer I'll be providing you in the next class. So today we will be discussing few important news articles, and the first important editorial is with respect to education. We all knew that annual status of education report is released by an NGO called Pratham. So it provides comprehensive details with respect to the status of education in India and the learning outcomes of students at the primary and foundational levels. So the IAS report has come up with some key findings and important findings. So they play a very important role as a policy inputs to make critical policy interventions. So what was the context of this editorial? The context was the annual survey of education report 2023. So it was released in mid-January, and this particular survey has been offering critical insights into the educational landscape of India. Please understand, IAS surveys the primary education, the learning outcomes, basic numeracy and foundational skills of students at the primary level. So therefore we get to know about the student enrollment ratio, student dropout ratio from this survey. So therefore this survey is primarily focusing on foundational skills of adolescents who are aged 14 to 18 years of age. And apart from that, there are a lot of concerns in recent times, concerns with respect to learning outcomes and also the career aspirations. Regarding this, the annual status of education report has provided some valuable data to inform policy interventions and improve the educational outcomes for the youth across the country. So please understand, when we have data, when we have evidence, we can make a specific interventions into any policy. And that is what IAS has been providing with crucial data. So it has been providing a lot of crucial data. So that data can be utilized for policy formulation, policy evaluation, and the policy implementation. So therefore, we can bring the best education to the children based on the existing data and existing evidence that is being provided by Pradham, the annual status of education report. So this was the context. So what are the key findings of this annual status of education report 2023? What are its key findings? So this report says that the foundational skills of 14 to 18 years of 18-year aged children, that it has revealed that 26% of 14 and 18-year-old, particularly in rural areas, cannot read a standard 2-level textbook in their regional languages. So that has been indicating poor learning outcomes of the students. So this essentially means that a class 2 student not able to a student in the age group of 14 to 18 years is not able to read a textbook of class 2 in his or her regional language. So that indicates poor learning outcomes, poor learning outcome of children. So that will impact his overall learning outcomes in the next classes and also his future performance also. So after that, it has also provided some key findings with respect to the trajectory of foundational learning. The historical data analysis indicating that without actually acquiring the foundational skills in primary grades, children are unlikely to develop them later. Okay, so this essentially means that if you cannot impart the foundational skills and numeracy in children in their primary grades or in their primary classes, so you cannot inculcate those skills and abilities in the children in later classes. So that continues to impact their learning outcomes over a period of time, and even if you providing education for those children, their learning outcomes would remain poor. So that even has the higher chance of dropout rate for students. So therefore, this has been highlighting there is a critical importance, there is a need for critical importance of early interventions in education. We need to come up with early interventions in education to make sure that the primary education has been actually emphasizing on the foundational literacy and basic numeracy, because when we emphasize on foundational literacy and basic numeracy at the primary grade levels, so that will significantly improve the learning outcomes of students, and that indicates that the existing education system has been transforming the students and transforming their futures. So that is the crux of the Pradham survey and its key findings. And after that, it has also provided some basic details with respect to the enrollment of children and their reading skills. So enrollment actually means that the number of children who are coming to schools, who are attending classes. So that is the enrollment ratio and reading skills. So ACER data has suggested that a significant portion of 14 to 18 years old students, they are lacking the basic reading skills, and that has been emphasizing on the need for interventions beyond the school-based programs. So we must not emphasize on the school-based programs only, rather there is a need for beyond the school-based programs. So when we think out of box, then we must do something, or we can do something in providing the basic reading skills to children. For example, we can emphasize on digital learning we can emphasize on, and apart from that, we can also take several other initiatives which are beyond the school level, and those interventions are very important that that can impart the foundational literacy and basic numeracy in children. So we must address the past failures and encourage the return to education. So due to poor learning outcomes, there is a higher dropout ratio in education. So dropout ratio is not just because of the poor learning outcomes, but it is also because of child marriages. Child marriages is another problem. So that has been increasing the existing dropout rate, and apart from that, child labor is another problem. Okay, so these are increasing, and apart from child labor, poverty is also the cause of increased dropout rate in children. So we must take interventions that could address these social challenges and increase the enrollment ratio of children in schools. So when we focus on enrollment ratio of children in schools, we must also promote the innovative learning approaches. So these innovative learning approaches would focus on both foundational literacy plus numeracy in children in their primary education. So that is where we can make the education more student friendly, and that is how we can also improve the learning outcomes of children at various levels. So that is the essence of this IAS survey and its key suggestions. Now there are several reading improvement programs that can be undertaken. So while focusing on school-based reading programs, there are certain reading programs which are specifically based on school. Okay, so apart from school-based reading programs which are crucial, the survey has also been highlighting necessity for empowering children to return school and fostering a positive environment for reading outside of the school. And secondly, we must emphasize on setting up or establishing community libraries and encouraging students to regularly attend those community libraries, establishing and managing those community libraries so they can create supportive environments for reading, and that requires committed individuals to lead and nurture the reading habits in children and adults alike. So that is a very important, because now when we say that any critical intervention which is beyond the school, so one such innovative invention or innovation was intervention was community libraries, creation of community libraries. So community libraries will also improve the learning abilities of students, and at the same time they also supplement the essential things that the schools are not providing. However, here the challenge is that we need committed individuals to run and manage those community libraries and nurture children. So that is how we can further improve the learning outcomes of the children. However, the IAS survey has also focused on youth aspirations and career development, but particularly focused on the vocational education and vocational training. So an annual status of education report has revealed that prominent career choices among surveyed youth with insights into the perception of vocational education. So now I wanted to link the vocational education with the demographic dividend. Now if you look at the conventional education, the problem with the conventional education is that students very often lack skills. When I say skills, those skills are not industry relevant. So those skills are not matching with the requirements of industries. But on the other hand, when we focused on vocational education or vocational training, and that is where we can make critical use of the existing demographic dividend. And those students who are engaged in vocational education, they can also be readily employed. And that is how we need to nurture students to take up vocational education. In India, we have programs like Sankalp and Strive that were launched by the government of India to promote vocational education and training. So that helps in better utilization of existing demographic dividend of our country. So in a similar sense, annual status of education report has also emphasized on the vocational education. So there were several positive experiences from context-driven vocational courses. And these context-driven vocational courses are also highlighting the potential for aspirational value in non-traditional career paths. And we should also leverage technology for the skill development. Now, if you look at the total number of workforce who are formally skilled, it is less than 5% of the total workforce. However, countries like Japan have total skilled workforce is more than 75. In fact, countries like South Korea have achieved 90% skilled workforce. But 5% for a country like India is very low. So in this context, we must leverage technology in enhancing the skill development. With increasing smartphone access among the youth, there is an opportunity to leverage the existing digital technology for educational purposes. So according to a report, it is said that around 550 million people have been using mobile phones or internet in India. So this digitization or digital technologies must be utilized in imparting skills for the students or skills for the youth. So that is how we can further improve and enrich our existing demographic dividend. However, this survey has also talking about the essential need for collaborations between the industry, educational institutions and various other professional groups. So when we have such collaborations between different stakeholders in the employment market, then we have skilled employees, and they are not just skilled, but they are skilled with the industry relevant skills, and at the same time they are readily employable, thereby better using our demographic dividend. However, the ACER survey has been revealing that we must focus on primary education. When we focus on primary education, basic numeracy and literacy must be emphasized at the primary levels of education, and apart from that there are critical interventions required outside the school-based programs. So therefore that could lead to the all-round development of the students and a bright future for every student in India's education system. So this is what this article has been talking about. Let's move on to the next important news article. So this article is with respect to India's total exports. India's exports. So it is suggesting that the policy makers must simply trade rules to boost exports. So the article's concern is India's export growth is the concern. Now if you look at India's total export, we can say that India is not a competitive export market. Rather than we have dependent on imports from several other countries like China. So therefore we must boost our exports. We must increase our export growth, and that is very important. So recently Asian Development Bank has come up with a forecast for India's GDP growth rate. So Asian Development Bank in its GDP forecast has underscores the importance of a trade policy, simplification and enhancing the export potential of the country. So if we make our existing trade policy further simplified, so that have a lot of potential in further enhancing the export potential of our country. So amidst the production or the projections of economic expansion, and addressing trade challenges and streamlining regulations becomes crucial for the sustainable growth. Okay, because now India's economy is looking at or going through the phase of expansion, and addressing the existing trade challenges and streamlining regulations are very important for a sustained growth, even further increasing India's total exports. Now what are the key highlights here of the Asian Development Bank's GDP forecast. So Asian Development Bank has revised India's GDP growth forecast for the fiscal year, and the Asian Development Bank has also citing the robust investment expectations of the rural economic recovery. So despite the optimistic projections by the Asian Development Bank, there are several concerns which are still persisting regarding the pace of growth and its sustainability. So yes, Asian Development Bank has making a forecast that India would see a rapid growth in near future. But the problem is the pace of growth and the sustainability. Can we sustain the same growth for a longer period of time? So that is in question. And there are a lot of global risks that we have been observing today. So global risks include potential rise in oil prices. So why potential rise in oil prices? Because of conflicts in Middle East. And conflicts in Middle East put pressure on the oil markets. And if you look at countries like India, they are major importers of crude oil. So in case any increase in the oil prices, crude oil prices, that certainly increases inflation in India. So imagine that if there is a higher inflation in India, so then input costs would significantly increase. Okay, so understand, if first there is an increase in the crude oil prices, that significantly increases the input cost by the domestic manufacturing industries. So input cost increases the prices of goods and services. Firstly, it increases inflation in the country, and apart from that, when we are exporting any goods into the foreign markets, please understand the goods will not be competitive compared to countries like China. Why not competitive? Because the prices of India's goods which are exported are very high compared to other countries' goods because of the higher crude oil prices. So therefore, the Asian Development Bank has been saying that the rise in oil prices and higher interest rates in the West would certainly impact India's economy, and that could adversely impact India's total economy. Okay, so in fact, the higher interest rates would also, impact India. How higher interest rates in the West would impact India's economy? Because if there are higher interest rates which are being provided in the West, so then there will be a withdrawal of the capital from Indian markets, withdrawal of the foreign exchange from the Indian markets. So all these factors would severely hit the Indian economy in the longer term. Okay, so if there is a withdrawal of the foreign investments out of Indian markets, so then that would increase the demand for forex reserves, and that would lead to the declining prices of declining rupee value. So declining rupee value means that we require more rupees to import essentials such as crude oil. So that again increasing the input cost and again increasing the inflation in a country like ours. Okay, so that is the problem. So therefore, the vulnerability of rupee to Western interest rates underscores the need for proactive risk management. So therefore, it is suggested that we need a proactive risk management in this context. And after that, there is also a need for simplification of trade rules to boost the exports. We must simplify the existing trade rules to boost the exports also, because export promotion for any country is most important and most crucial. Export earn crucial forex reserves, and they boost economy, and they also provide employment in the manufacturing sector. So therefore, we must emphasize on export promotion strategies. So as part of export promotion strategies, we must simplify the trade rules firstly, and we must also create a conducive policy environments, and those conducive policy environments are essential to enhance the export competitiveness of our country. So the Asian Development Bank recommendation to establish large scale social and large scale special economic zones. So that is very important. Okay, so even if you look at any special economic zone in any country, special economic zone. For example, in India also we have a special economic zones. Now what are these special economic zones? So they are actually a designated area, so in a country that is subjected to more favorable economic regulations, so that increases the export growth, from one country to other country. So therefore, large scale special economic zones actually aligns with the goal of boosting the exports and integrating the global supply chains also. Logistics infrastructure improvement is also another important aspect here. We must reduce the logistic cost. We must reduce the logistics cost as well. Because if you look at the competitiveness in terms of logistics, India has the higher logistic cost compared to countries like China. So therefore we must focus on reducing the logistic costs, and that is very important. So addressing logistics infrastructure deficiencies is critical or very important for facilitating trade and reducing the transaction costs also. And after that, we must enhance the connectivity. So connectivity is also very important, because connectivity is very often linked with reducing the logistic costs, and at the same time the streamlining of logistical operations, and that can improve India's total competitiveness in the global markets. So if you compare Indian goods with the Chinese goods, Indian goods with a higher quality, they must be cheaper compared to the Chinese goods. So that is known as competitiveness. When our goods are more competitive, then there will be a lot of demand in the international market for Indian goods, and that is how we can promote exports. We can further enhance the export-led growth, and that is very often having a multiplier effect on the economy. So the next article that is also in news, the Hindu news article, that is Indian Institute of Science Bengaluru researchers actually designed a novel hydrogel to remove the microplastics from the water. Now please understand, microplastics are emerging as a threat to the aquatic species, and at the same time, through a process called biomagnification and bioaccumulation, they are also entering into the human food chain. Bioaccumulation, they are entering into the human food chain. So therefore, in this context, these microplastics are very concerning. Now there are a few microplastic varieties that they are microbeads. So microbeads are the form of microplastics, and they are also very concerning. Now how this hydrogen actually works, so we need to understand. So the photocatalytic degradation of this is actually the way through which we can remove microplastics from the water. So imagine this is all the aquatic ecosystem. Okay, so this is all the aquatic ecosystem, and we are polluting the existing aquatic ecosystems with the plastics. And these plastics are mostly anthropogenic in nature. So these are anthropogenic sources of microplastics, and they are indiscriminately released into the water bodies, and thereby contaminating those water bodies. And these microplastics are very often eaten by the fish and other marine population. Okay, so the aquatic organisms very often consuming these microplastics, and in fact these microplastics are also entering into the human food chain. For example, the microplastic are eaten by the aquatic species, and when we eat these aquatic species, because everything is part of the food chain. Okay, so everything is part of the food chain. When we eat these aquatic species through the processes called biomagnification and bioaccumulation, they also ingested into the human bodies, so that are having a lot of negative consequences on the human beings. So in this context, the microplastics absorption by the hydrogen. Okay, so microplastics are actually absorbed by IPN hydrogel. So this is not a hydro, this is hydrogel. Okay, so IPL hydrogel. So this hydrogel has been absorbing the microplastics, and then the photocatalytic degradation has been absorbed the microplastics. So this is how microplastics are being removed out of the water, and we'll understand this in a detailed manner. So Indian Institute of Science researchers innovate hydrogel to eliminate microplastics. So microplastic contamination of water is very concerning now. So addressing health risks and sustainability concerns. So it has been addressing health risks and sustainability concerns also. So about the hydrogel design. So we all already know that Indian Institute of Science researchers have innovated a sustainable hydrogel to eliminate the microplastics from the water. So microplastics, what are these microplastics? Microplastics are actually posing significant health risks. How they are posing significant health risks? Because I've already told you that through the processes called biomagnification and bioaccumulation, so they have been entering into the food chain and also entering into the human beings. Okay, so they are posing health risks and they can infiltrate into the human body via water consumption, and that has been further heightening the likelihood of several diseases and even the severe illness or critical illness. The Indian Institute of Science's hydrogel features a distinct polymer network, and this distinct polymer network adapt at binding and degrading the contaminants under the UV light. So they can just absorb the microplastics in the water, and those microplastics would be degraded under the UV light. So what are these microplastics? So microplastics is actually a plastic pollution in oceans, and they degrades into microplastics less than 5 millimeter in diameter. So they are less than 5 millimeter in diameter, these microplastics. And secondly, microplastics, when we talk about microplastics, they are very tiny particles. Tiny particles, you can understand here, they are less than 5 millimeter in size. So they are products like microbeads, plastic pellets and fibers. So there are also secondary microplastics. Secondary microplastics result from a larger plastic breakdowns like water bottles. Okay, so a plastic breakdown from water bottles result in secondary microplastics. So both types pose risks to the marine life and even the human health also. After that, so you can see here clearly, so industrial activities by human beings and plastic littering has been contributing to this microplastics or plastic contamination, and fragmentation due to UV mechanical and microbial activities, and that has been resulting in creation of microplastics. So these microplastic in turn ingested by the fish, and when we eat fish, then they will be ingested into the human beings. Okay, so this is these microplastics are actually becoming part of the overall food chain and food web, and ultimately entering into the human bodies through biomagnification and bioaccumulation. So the next important news article is about AIIMS. All India Institute of Medical Science launched study to test accuracy of human papilloma virus kits for cervical cancer screening. Okay, so please understand, the cervical cancer is the second most common cancer among Indian women. Okay, so this is the second most common cancer in Indian women and is often detected late, underlining the need for self-sampling of methods. So these self-sampling kit for cervical cancer caused by human papilloma virus is currently being tested by the institutes, hospitals to find out the acceptance among women and its efficiency. Okay, so World Health Organization has recommended it as a method to increase the cervical cancer screening. So when we screen the cervical cancer at an early stage, when we diagnose the cervical cancer at an early stage, we can come up with appropriate interventions. So thereby, so it will not lead to the large scale mortality among women because of this cancer, or it would not have any adverse impacts on the health of the woman because of this particular cancer. Okay, so why this is in news? This is in news because All India Institute of Medical Sciences, doctors or this institute conducts a study to validate the indigenous HPV testing kits for cervical cancer screening, and they are aiming to enhance the accessibility and affordability of these kits for women. because World Health Organization has already recommended these kits for self-screening. So about AIMS study on HPV testing kits, human papilloma virus. Okay, so this is human papilloma virus. Okay, so AIMS Delhi launched a study to validate the indigenous HPV testing kits for cervical cancer screening. So this study actually aims to assess the accuracy of these kits across the multiple study centers with global samples. Okay, so AIMS Delhi has launched this study to validate the indigenously developed HPV testing kits. So these HPV testing kits are used for detecting or screening the cervical cancer. So this study by AIMS actually aimed at assessing the accuracy of these kits across multiple study. So when they are more accurate, that will ensure accessibility and affordability, because remember, it is indigenously developed. The study will evaluate the efficacy of the human papilloma virus testing kits or screening kits as per the international quality standards. Okay, so what is a cervical cancer? Cervical cancer develops in cervix, and it is also ranked as the fourth most prevalent cancer among women globally, but in India this is the second most cancer among women in India. So it is predominantly caused by infection with high risk of human papilloma virus, usually transmitted through the sexual contact. So about human papilloma virus vaccine. So the persistent high risk of human papilloma infection and low socioeconomic status and smoking are major factors. They have been contributing for the cervical cancer. And apart from that, the human papilloma virus vaccination and screening, timely treatment and early detection and prevention of this disease is very important. And in order to prevent this disease, we must vaccinate, and early screening is important, and also the timely treatment must be provided to the woman. So that helps in preventing this cervix cancer or cervical cancer. So if you can look at some data with respect to the cervical cancer, around 6 lakh women diagnosed with the cervical cancer in the year 2020. So 3.4 lakh women died of this cervical cancer worldwide, and 90% of the cases and deaths occur in the low and middle income countries such as India. So in India, 1.2 lakh cervical cancer cases every year it is registered, and out of 1.2 lakh cervical cancer cases, 67,000 deaths a year have been taking place because of this cancer. So therefore it is a huge concern for a country like India. So screening, diagnosis and treatment at the right time, and also vaccination, the human papilloma virus vaccination is very important. So we must emphasize on screening, vaccines, and rollout of Cervavac. So this is also a vaccine, and it is expected to make vaccination affordable to ensure the wider coverage of women under this vaccine. Okay, so this is all about the cervical cancer, and that's all for today, and thank you so much. So please like our video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.